It's the 1960s, and this is Pieve di Cento in North Italy. This is Ferruccio. He makes tractors for farmers. He becomes successful and buys a Ferrari. This is Maranello. This is where Ferrari factory is located. But there's a problem. Ferruccio's Ferrari has recurring problems with the clutch. Each time he has to drive to Maranello to get it fixed. After this happens a few times, he finally complains to the company's owner, Enzo. But Enzo responds, "You may be able to drive a tractor, but you'll never be able to handle a Ferrari properly." Little does Enzo know that his words just sparked the competition that will continue till today, because Ferruccio's name is Lamborghini. This is the story of a modest farmer boy who starts making tractors and the 10 lira tractor clutch that inspires him to create his own sports car company that will one day make the world's fastest production car in history. Just a quick pause, guys. It's winter, it's getting cold, so check out E-Wool. They're my friends in Canada. They sell heated vests and gloves because, let's be real, they're Canadian and they know how to survive extreme cold. If you work outside or you're into motorbiking, hiking, camping, or Arctic expeditions, E-Wool's waterproof heated vest keeps you warm even in negative 40 degrees. And the battery lasts all day. Their gear is designed and tested in Canada, land of extreme winters. So go to ewool.com and get 10% off with my discount code here. And remember, these guys are my friends, not a paid promotion. It's 1916 in the Emilia-Romagna region of northern Italy. Ferruccio Lamborghini is born. His parents are viticulturists, and Ferruccio grows up in his family vineyard. As Ferruccio gets older, he becomes more interested in farming machinery rather than farming itself. So he goes to the Fratelli Taddea Technical Institute near Bologna. World War II starts and he gets drafted into the Italian Royal Air Force. He serves as a mechanic and becomes supervisor of the car maintenance unit. He gets taken as prisoner when the British take Rhodes. A year later, he returns home and gets married, but his wife dies while giving birth to their first child. People are tired from the war. Italy's economy is damaged. Everyone wants to rebuild and return back to normal life. Imagine Ferruccio, just 31 years old, a recent widow with a baby son, needs to restart from scratch. He decides to do what he knows best, which is to be a mechanic. He sees opportunity in agricultural automation and industrial revitalization in post-war Italy. So he opens a garage and purchases all kinds of cheap surplus war equipment. He starts building tractors based on the 6-cylinder petrol engines of Morris trucks with parts from decommissioned military vehicle engines. His first tractor is called Carioca. The problem is that petrol in post-war Italy is extremely expensive, but diesel isn't. So Ferruccio modifies the engines with his own fuel atomizer so that the tractors start with petrol, but then switch to diesel. The small local farmers admire these tractors, so Ferruccio establishes his company, Lamborghini Trattori, and his business takes off. In his spare time, Ferruccio dreams of driving much faster than tractors. He modifies his Fiat Topolino to be open-top and increases the engine capacity from 500cc into a roaring 750cc. He then enters the car in the Mille Miglia, which is a 1,000-mile open-road motorsports endurance race. After 680 miles, his car crashes into a restaurant. The accident causes him to lose enthusiasm for racing, so he quits racing and focuses on his tractor business. But he doesn't lose his love for cars. Ferruccio soon becomes one of the wealthiest men in Italy. Soon, he's able to buy any car. So he does. His collection includes an Alfa Romeo, Lancia, Mercedes-Benz 300 SL, and Maserati 3500 GTS. But what he doesn't have is a Ferrari. So in 1958, he drives to Maranello to buy his first 250 GT. He gets addicted and eventually buys 2 more. Ferruccio loves his Ferraris, but he also feels they're too noisy and rough for a street car, and also that their interiors are poorly designed. But that's not the biggest problem. Ferruccio soon notices his Ferraris have recurring clutch problems. Every single time he has to drive 35 miles to Maranello and back. Each repair takes several hours, and this irritates him. He complains to Enzo Ferrari, but Enzo dismisses him, saying that he should mind his own tractor business but leave the sports car business to him. We can thank Enzo for the birth of Lamborghini cars because it's his response that inspires Ferruccio to modify his personal Ferrari. Ferruccio notices that some of the Ferrari clutch components are actually the same as the one he uses on his own tractors. He replaces the clutch with one with stronger specifications, and his modified version outperforms the original stock model. He realizes that if he installs the tractor components in a high-performance exotic car, then he can triple his profit. So he starts his own sports car company. He calls it Automobili Ferruccio Lamborghini. Ferruccio's goal is to build the best sports car ever for the road, much faster and more reliable than Ferrari. But he's not into racing, and he believes he can create a much better road car. Many people think he's gone crazy. That's because it's 1963 and most people are driving cars like this. Anything outside of this is considered an excess and extravagance. People fear that Ferruccio is chasing an impossible dream and that he'll squander his fortune without making a profit. Ferruccio sets up shop just 20 miles from the Ferrari factory. Then he convinces Ferrari engineers Giampaolo Dallara and Bob Wallace to join his company and design cars for him. They start working on their first prototype, the Lamborghini 350 GTV. The front is slick like the Jaguar E-Type, and the rear bodywork tapers like Aston Martin DB4. Many of his styling details are unusual for his time, like hidden headlamps and 6 exhaust tailpipes. The initial engine design is based on a plan for a Formula One racing engine. The engine has a compression ratio of 9.5 to 1 and relatively aggressive valve timing, more suitable for racing rather than a comfortable road car. They're ready to present their prototype at the 1963 Turin Auto Show, but during final assembly, they realize that the body panels won't fit around the engine. So they have the engine bay ballasted with bricks, and they keep the hood shut throughout the show. The show car is incomplete because it lacks brake calipers, foot pedals, and windshield wipers, but they present their prototype at the show. They get positive reviews, but they also get negative reviews. Ferruccio is dissatisfied with several design features and the state of tune of the engine. He feels it's not practical for a road car, so they detune the original engine and redesign the chassis for street use. They keep the features that are positive from the prototype, including the 4-wheel independent suspension, quad-cam 3.5-liter Lamborghini V12, and the aluminum body. Little do they know that the V12 engine they're developing would continue to power future Lamborghini models all the way until 2010. It's 1964. They released their first production model, the Lamborghini 350 GT. It's superior to Ferrari in every aspect that Ferruccio had criticized them for. Over the next 2 years, the company makes 120 units before replacing it with the next model, the 400 GT. In the meantime, Lamborghini's top engineers are Giampaolo Dallara, Paolo Stanzani, and Bob Wallace. They're all young minds in their mid-20s, and they all come from a racing background. They know Ferruccio is against race cars and that he prefers a powerful grand touring car for the road, but they're convinced that they can create a road car with racing potential, one that could win on the track, but also be driven on the road to get groceries. To prove this, they start a top-secret project to build a prototype. It's codenamed P400. They work on it on their spare time and off hours with the goal to convince Ferruccio that a car like this can be affordable and also in line with the company's focus. The team finally presents it to Ferruccio, who surprisingly approves their idea, not because he's set on racing, but because he's a good businessman and he sees that creating a powerful road car will build up credibility to a startup. He likes the idea so much that he gives them free rein to proceed and only insists that it will not be raced. He sets the example of a manager who lets his skilled engineers lead product development. But at the end of the day, he also sets the example of a businessman who makes decisions for marketing reasons. It's 1966. The team works around the clock 7 days a week. They're ready to debut the P400 at the Geneva Motor Show. But just before the event, guess what happens? Again, they realize they forgot one critical thing. None of the engineers had time to check whether the engine fit inside its compartment. So at the last moment, they do what they did 3 years ago. They fill the engine bay with ballast and keep the hood locked throughout the show. At the show, they turn away automotive press who want to see the car's power plant. Despite the setback, people love the car. The car becomes the highlight of the show. The next year, they released the P400 under the name Miura, after the famous fighting bull breeder and Ferruccion's friend. Ferruccio is a fan of bullfighting. He loves bulls because they're brave, intimidating, untamable. That's the reputation and image he wants his cars to convey. That's why he adopts a raging bull for his company emblem. He also goes on to name future cars after breeds of fighting bulls. The Raging Bull logo fits the Miura because of the car's power, which surprises the car industry. It's the first supercar with a rear mid-engine two-seat layout. It's also the fastest production road car at the time, exceeding 185 miles an hour. The Miura's body is styled by Marcello Gandini. The exterior is stunning, muscular, unique. People consider it aggressive and elegant at the same time. Also unique is the Miura's signature eyelashes around the headlights. The story goes that the team installed the Fiat 850 Spider headlights on the Miura. The iconic eyelashes were designed to divert attention away from the cost-cutting measure, although it also makes you wonder whether they were subconsciously inspired by the electric hair trimmer. Orders flood in for the Miura. It gives the company cash, but more than that, it gives them publicity and prestige. Ultimately, Lamborghini would go on to sell more than 700 Miuras during its 7-year production run. Lamborghini starts working on 2 more models to add to the product line. It's 1968, and at the Geneva Motor Show, they introduce both. The first is the Islero. It has a 300 horsepower engine, and this is the GT that Ferruccio had dreamed of. But the public is attached to the stylish Miura, so Islero GT sales are just modest. It would leave the stage quietly the following year. The second car they reveal is the Spada. The name means sword, referring to the sword that bullfighters use. It really isn't a politically correct or humane name, but it fits Ferruccio's fascination with bullfighting. The Spada is a 4-seat Grand Touring coupe with a front-mounted engine. People consider it revolutionary and original. It has a large passenger compartment, spacious trunk, and strong V12 engine. The Spada eventually becomes Lamborghini's bestseller, selling almost 1,300 units during its 10-year production run. By the end of the 1960s, Lamborghini's luxury sports cars are in high demand. Ferruccio feels Miura is for people who are young at heart, love speed, and love to be seen. He personally feels the Miura is a bit flamboyant and extroverted for his own personality. The Spada, on the other hand, is more like his Rolls-Royce. It's still quite fast, but also large, comfortable, sensible, more practical. Now, he wants something in between the 2-seat Miura and the 4-seat Spada. A best of both worlds, a car that will be the finest Italian Gran Turismo. This gives birth to the Jarama. It would become his personal all-time favorite car. It's 1970. They revealed the Jarama at the Geneva Motor Show, but it fails to impress car enthusiasts. It's below their expectations because it looks too conventional. Its front edges are soft and rounded. It's not outrageous and extravagant like Miura or Spada. This isn't the reaction Ferruccio expected. In the meantime, the Ferrari Daytona was introduced recently. The Daytona is a traditional front-engined rear-drive car, but the style is fresh with sharp front edges. It's noticeably different than previous Ferraris, which have a more rounded design. In comparison to the Daytona, Ferruccio feels the Miura is looking outdated. He realizes he needs to create a car to succeed the Miura. He personally prefers comfortable Grand Tours, but he also understands from the public's negative reaction to the Jarama versus the positive reception to the Daytona that his company needs something more provocative. The successor needs to have the greatest performance possible as well as a body that's aerodynamically efficient yet aesthetically daring. So his team starts working on a more radical and uncompromising sports car. After a year of intensive work, they give their first reveal at the 1971 Geneva Motor Show. Lamborghini steals the entire show with the LP500 prototype, better known as the Countach. The Countach surprises the public. It stands out because of its unconventional style, its slick, aggressive tapered nose, lack of large mudguards, and rear spoilers. It's entirely wedge-shaped, very angular and geometric, with a low, flat front and truncated tail. The Countach also comes with scissor doors. It's the first production car to have this feature. It was previously seen in the 1968 Alfa Romeo Carabo concept car. That's because both cars were designed by Marcello Gandini. The scissor door is not just for dramatic aesthetics. The Countach has a wide chassis, which makes rear visibility very poor. To reverse such a wide car, Normally, the driver needs to open his door wide to look behind. That's already quite awkward as it is, but also the traditional door requires a wide swing radius to open, which is a challenge if you're parking next to another car or curb. Marcello's innovative solution is the scissor door. It allows the driver to lift the door up and lean his upper body out to see behind in order to reverse the car. Scissor doors would become a trademark feature to Lamborghini cars. So much so that the term becomes synonymous as Lambo doors. Lamborghini also addresses the visibility problem with another creative feature. They install a periscope that's integrated into the passenger compartment roof. The periscope is the reason why the Countach LP400's roof is rigid and depressed. The idea sounds novel, like being in a submarine, but in reality, the system doesn't work well because of the height and positioning, so they later abandoned the periscope setup. But they keep the rigid roof because people consider it stylish. Countach's wow factor is reflected in its name. Lamborghini took a break from tradition by giving it a name unrelated to fighting bulls. Instead, the name comes from an expression of astonishment used in northern Italy. It's equivalent to saying awesome or wow. The story goes that the design team had a member who made the locks. He was over 6 feet tall with 2 enormous hands, and he performed all the small jobs. He barely spoke any Italian and spoke only Piedmontese, a dialect from the Piedmont region of Italy. He had the habit of saying Countach to express amazement or admiration. One night, the team was working late and they were tired, so they started joking around to keep morale up. Marcello joked that they should call the car Countach since they heard it all the time in the workshop. Still jesting, he asked Bob Wallace, who's from New Zealand, how the word sounded to an English speaker. When they wrote it out, it just worked. The name stuck, and the rest is history. To appreciate this astonishing car, we need to rewind a bit. This is the Countach. And this is the Lancia Stratos Zero. And this is the Alfa Romeo Carabo. You can see some similarities because all 3 cars were designed by Marcello Gandini. The Stratos and the Carabo came earlier and were precursors to the Countach. They all share the crisp wedge shape, sharp angles, and wide body. It was especially novel at the time because the average person in the 1970s was driving cars like this, or this, or this. The angular wedge style would become a signature look for many future Lamborghinis that followed the Countach and beyond. In case you haven't noticed, we could even argue that the Cybertruck could pass as a distant cousin. The origami truck emulates the sharp edges, straight lines, and polygonal look as Marcello's designs. The details differ, of course. The Countach was all about trapezoids, while the Cybertruck is more about triangles and rectangles. Regardless, they're both very geometric and angular, rather than conventional rounded edges like Ferrari, McLaren, Bugatti, or Koenigsegg. If you haven't seen my video on Koenigsegg, check it out. The Countach is also innovative because it's the first V12 road car with an engine that's longitudinally mounted. Previously, this layout was used only in racing cars to improve the weight distribution. It increases stability since more mass is at the car's center. The layout also means a shorter overall wheelbase, easier and faster shifting, better cooling, and easier maintenance access to engine components. The US becomes Lamborghini's biggest market. That's why Lamborghini is willing to adjust their design to meet American regulations. The US version of the Countach comes with bulkier safety bumpers because the car didn't meet the US crash safety standards. Many owners remove the bumpers because they're unattractive and ruin the lines of the car's design. But before we talk about what succeeds the Countach, let's return back to Ferruccio. As you'll recall, when the Countach gets revealed in 1971, it gets rave reviews. Ferruccio feels Lamborghini is at its height. But little does he know that a year prior, a chain of events has already started, which would change his life and the future of his company forever. It's 1970. Ferruccio's tractor business is already extremely successful. It's known as one of the top tractor companies in Italy. It's also well known outside of Italy. In fact, they're exporting half of their production to other countries. That's because over 80% of the tractor parts are built in-house, and this ensures high-quality tractors. One new client is the government of Bolivia, which places a very large order, 5,000 tractors. At the time, Bolivia is a country, mostly of farmers, miners, and otherwise peaceful people. But what's not so peaceful is the government. The political situation is a revolving door that keeps changing. When its president, General René Barrientos, dies in a helicopter crash, General Ovando stages a coup d'etat. A year later, he gets overthrown by General Rogelio Mirando, who's then overthrown a few days later by General J.J. Torres, who then gets overthrown by Hugo Banzer Suarez the next year. Somewhere during this chaotic time, the new government cancels their order with Lamborghini. Ferruccio already has 5,000 tractors built and ready to ship out, but now he has to hold them on his factory ground. In addition, their South African importer, Cento, cancels all of their orders. But that's not all. The early 1970s also brings in a lot of trade unions and strikes in Italy. Labor unions create a difficult situation for Ferruccio. All of his employees are unionized and can't be laid off. This impacts him financially and emotionally. Ferruccio starts to lose confidence in his businesses. He sells half of his car business to a Swiss businessman and friend, George Henri Rossetti. Now, the domestic troubles he can see, but what he can't see is something else that happens across the ocean. The next year, the stock market crashes. Also, the Arab-Israeli war starts the oil crisis. The oil crisis causes governments to mandate new fuel economy laws. It also causes consumers to seek smaller, more practical cars. Gas-guzzling sports cars quickly become unfashionable. This is how the Euraco is born. The name translates to Little Bull. It's the baby bull of the family, but it's not another supercar like the Miura. Instead, it's a 4-seater sedan with a V8 engine, and it focuses on comfort. It's more affordable and it's an alternative to the Ferrari Dino and Maserati Meroc. But Ferruccio's businesses continue to suffer. Ferruccio becomes disillusioned with the industrial world. Despite his business acumen, he realizes he can't control external factors like the global economy and social pressures, so he sells his tractor business. He also sells the remaining half of his car business to another Swiss businessman, René Leimer. Ferruccio leaves the car industry and industrial world to retire. He returns to his family's farming roots, cultivating grapes and making premium table wine. But apparently, he keeps his love for bulls because he names his wine the blood of the Miura. Today, Ferruccio's family still operates the vineyards and they sell wine even now. It's the second half of the 70s. Lamborghini is now a company without its founder Ferruccio. They face more difficulties. Sales continue to drop, and a lot of their factory equipment sit idle. Lamborghini's new managers decide to seek outside collaboration to see if they can make use of the idle equipment. They sign a contract with BMW Motorsport. This venture is to design and develop BMW's M1 sports cars. BMW lacked experience with mid-engine vehicles, which is Lamborghini's area of expertise. So things look promising. But then, something unexpected happens that'll complicate matters. Lamborghini wins a contract with Mobility Technology International, or MTI, to supply the US military with a new high-performance off-road vehicle that can handle the roughest terrain. This is a new class outside of Lamborghini's norm. Even the name of the prototype is not in keeping with their usual Fighting Bull lineup. This prototype is called Cheetah. The Cheetah is powered by a rear-mounted Chrysler V8 engine, but it performs poorly because the rear-mounted engine gives it very poor handling characteristics, and the engine choice isn't powerful enough for the Chevy vehicle. But it's not just technical issues. They face legal problems too. MTI had created the basic design, but is largely a copy of the XR311 prototype that FMC had developed for the military in 1970. So when the Cheetah is presented at the Geneva Motor Show, FMC sues MTI and Lamborghini. Lamborghini isn't big enough to make the level of investment needed to resolve the technical and legal problems, so they're unable to produce the Cheetah. Years later, the world would see the Humvee, which people would say the Cheetah and XR311 led to. To develop the Cheetah, Lamborghini had diverted their resources away from the BMW project, so they fall behind schedule to develop the car's structure and running gear. When Lamborghini fails to deliver the working prototypes on time, their agreement with BMW falls apart. Soon after these setbacks, Lamborghini discontinues several models. The Spada ends in 1978, and the following year, Euraco and Silhouette get discontinued. So the late 1970s, Lamborghini is only producing the Countach S version. Business is shrinking. Lamborghini is in a financial crisis. It slides into bankruptcy and liquidation. It's 1980. The Italian courts give receivership of Lamborghini to two brothers, Jean-Claude and Patrick Mimran. They're wealthy owners of a sugar empire in Senegal and sports car lovers. The Mimran brothers purchase and restructure the company, inject a lot of cash into it, and hire the talented Maserati engineer Giulio Alfieri as the technical director. Their investment sees immediate results. They modify and rework the failed Silhouette into the Yalpa. The Yalpa is more successful than the Silhouette. It's also closer to achieving Lamborghini's goal of a more affordable version of the Countach. They also revisit the failed Cheetah project. This results in the LM002 sports utility vehicle. It's Lamborghini's first off-road giant with the performance of Lamborghini's sports cars that fans are familiar with. It gets dubbed Rambo Lambo. It's designed to intimidate an enemy. It has a V12 similar to the one used for the Countach and all-wheel drive. This would later be a precursor to high-power SUVs that Lamborghini would create a decade later. It's 1987. The Mimran brothers sell Lamborghini to the car giant Chrysler for $25.2 million. The price is a multiple of what the Mimran brothers bought it for just 7 years earlier. Chrysler is under Lee Iacocca. Previously, he had saved Chrysler from almost falling into bankruptcy and he had turned the company around. Will he do the same with Lamborghini? Chrysler implements new strategies to try to revive Lamborghini. One of these is motorsports. Historically, Lamborghini under Ferruccio have been against motorsports because Ferruccio thought it was too expensive on company resources. But now, under Chrysler management, Lamborghini tries supplying engines for Formula One race cars, but it does less than stellar. So eventually, Chrysler ends the project. Chrysler also invests $50 million to revive Lamborghini. They want to enter the extra premium sports car market and compete with Ferrari. Their target is to sell 5,000 sports cars per year worldwide. They also want Lamborghini to make an engine that can be used in a Chrysler car for the American market. At the time, Lamborghini had been developing a successor to the Countach, the Diablo, named after a ferocious bull that fought an epic battle in Madrid. The Diablo was initially designed by Marcello Gandini, but Chrysler executives were unimpressed, so they commissioned Tom Gale to redesign the car's body and smoothen out the Lamborghini's trademark hard edges and corners. Of course, Gandini hates the revised design. It's 1990. Chrysler unveils the Diablo. It has 492 horsepower generated by a 5.7-liter V12. It's the fastest production car in the world at the time and the first production Lamborghini with the top speed over 200 miles an hour. It comes better equipped than the Countach, as well as options such as factory-fitted luggage set priced at $2,600 and an exclusive Breguet clock for the dash. In case you haven't heard about Breguet, they make some of the most expensive watches and clocks in the world. They invented the Tourbillon and also the world's first wristwatch. They say Napoleon Bonaparte took a Breguet clock into battle, and lots of royalty and famous people like Winston Churchill owned Breguet timepieces. But now back to our story. The Diablo proves extremely successful. The company receives immediate sales and Lamborghini finally starts to make a profit. But good times come to an end. In just 2 years, sales crash. That's because the Diablo's sales price, $239,000, is too expensive for American enthusiasts. Lamborghini is bleeding money. Chrysler can't justify investing further in Lamborghini. They discontinue the Yalpa and LM002. Then, they sell Lamborghini for $40 million to Megatech, which is owned by an Indonesian conglomerate. The company gets restructured, and a Malaysian investment group then owns 40% of it. It's 1997. Lamborghini finally passes its break-even point. It's 1998. Thailand unpegs their currency from the US dollar. This causes a series of currency devaluations, and the Asian financial crisis spreads to neighboring economies. This opens the way for Volkswagen to go on a shopping spree. They buy Bentley, Bugatti, and Lamborghini. Volkswagen's subsidiary Audi gets control of Lamborghini. Audi oversees the successor to the Diablo, the Murcielago. It's named after a famous fighting bull that survived 24 sword strokes in 1879. The bull fought with such passion that the matador chose to spare his life, which was a very rare honor. Later, the bull was given as a gift to the famous breeder Don Antonio Miura, brother of Ferruccio's friend Don Eduardo Miura. The name Murcielago is fitting because the car is power boosted to 580 horsepower and has more speed, muscle, and acceleration than the Diablo. Lamborghini aims to redefine the segment as the best high-performance sports car that allows driving behavior that fits a driver in any situation. In 2003, they produced the Gallardo. It's a compact two-seater high-performance car. The first generation comes with a 500 horsepower 50-valve V10 engine, permanent four-wheel drive and a top speed of over 186 miles an hour. The Gallardo would become Lamborghini's best-selling model, ultimately selling over 14,000 units. To put that into perspective, if you look at the entire production from 1963 to 2014, Lamborghini built almost 30,000 cars. That means almost half of total Lamborghini production were Gallardo units. It's 2007. The new millennium brings in the US real estate burst, which leads to the global financial crisis and the Great Recession. Lamborghini sales dropped nearly 50% in the years that follow, until 2011. That's the year Lamborghini introduces the Aventador. It gets called the best Lamborghini ever and the friendliest V12 supercar in the world. Car enthusiasts love the all-new V12 power plant due to the engine's responsiveness, torque, and smooth power output. The Aventador posts the 5th fastest time ever recorded on the Top Gear test track with a time of 1 minute 16.5 seconds. It beats the $2 million Bugatti Veyron Supersport, Ferrari Enzo, and the Porsche 911 GT3. Top Gear awards the Aventador the 2011 Supercar of the Year. The Aventador SVJ would eventually become the fastest production car ever to do the Nürburgring Nordschleife circuit. It would break the record in 2018, beating the previous record holder, the Porsche 911 GT2 RS, by almost 3 seconds. Its lap time, 6 minutes 44.97 seconds. It's now 2014. The Huracan replaces the Gallardo, which is 10 years old. It has the same V10 engine from the Gallardo, tuned to generate a max power output of 602 horsepower. The engine has both direct fuel injection and multi-point fuel injection. It's the first time this combination is used in a V10 engine. It's 2018. Lamborghini surprises the public. It releases the Urus. Remember, 25 years ago, they had discontinued the LM002, so the Urus is their first SUV since then. But it's not your ordinary SUV. In fact, Lamborghini calls it an SSUV, short for Super SUV. It's the supercar designed for the whole family. The front is similar to the Aventador, and the back has a hint of Huracan. Mechanics-wise, it's one of the fastest and most powerful SUVs on the planet. It's also the first turbocharged model in Lamborghini history. It can go from 0 to 60 in 3.6 seconds and has a top speed of 190 miles an hour, which is remarkable for an SUV. Another surprising element is its weight. It weighs a little over 4,850 pounds, so it equals a luxury coupe or sedan. In fact, it has one of the best power-to-weight ratio for an SUV. The Urus has a non-conventional four-wheel steering system. In conventional steering, the nose of the car goes where your two front wheels are pointed. The rear wheels drag along the direction of the front wheels. But the Urus's four-wheel steering enables you to have your kids in tow but still drive with the maneuverability like a sports car or monster truck. So why did Lamborghini decide to re-enter the SUV market again? After all, the last 60 years, they've been mainly about road cars that perform, and they were against racing, and traditionally they just focused on two-door sports cars. The reason was they saw a growing trend in the SUV market. Porsche was the first major luxury car maker to enter in modern times. The Porsche Cayenne sold out of dealership as fast as Porsche could even build them. The Cayenne is a huge money maker, along with the smaller sibling, the Macan. Both models make over 30% of their worldwide sales. To put that into perspective, the tipping point came in 2015. That's the year SUVs outsold sedans in the US market. By 2019, SUVs made up 47% of US car sales, whereas sedans were 22%. It's been an upward trend because of baby boomers, ride height, practicality, and vanity. That's why Lamborghini decided to re-enter the SUV market. Urus sales are now funding Lamborghini's Aventador and Huracan follow-ups. The Urus is priced over $200,000, and Lamborghini expects to double their worldwide sales. Since the beginning, Ferrucci's dream was to build road cars that performed. The story of Lamborghini can be summed up by its emblem, the Raging Bull. Its founder, Ferruccio, began as a farmer who started making tractors and then super sports cars. The company faced many external factors beyond their control. They also got bounced around like a foster child when ownership changed from Italy to US, Indonesia, Malaysia, and Germany. Each time, they continued to charge forward, faced new challenges with tenacity and endurance. And so the Raging Bull rages on today. If you liked this episode, please share the video. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.